Hello, and happy Sunday, April 26th, 26th day of National Poetry Month, and the 51st day of the pandemic officially, I think. Yeah, so yesterday we rounded out book 10 and got to listen to Adam and Eve try to decide how they ought to comport themselves, what they ought to do, basically, in the aftermath of their punishment and their recognition of their own guilt. And it's an interesting thing to watch them reflect on. Because you go from Adam, who I think I called complaining Adam at the beginning, and just watch him try to come to terms with what he has brought on himself, what they have brought on themselves. And they go through a lot of rational options. Like Eve suggests they just don't have children. And Adam basically says, nah, can't promise that I will be able to be celibate with you. So can't do that. Eve says, well, why don't we just commit suicide? Like, we can take control of our own, of when we meet death. Let's see if we can. We don't know that we can't, so let's try. Let's try to just short circuit this whole thing, cut everything short, and we can kill ourselves. And Adam says, no, I don't think that's a great idea either. So they basically just end the book, not where they began, with a more developed sense of where they stand, and I guess what do they believe within the circumstances and structures that they now find themselves in. Eve and Adam are finally sort of communicating with one another, not with Eve looking to Adam for all the answers, but with Eve more actively providing her own thoughts on what they might do, and Adam actually listening. And that is interesting. I like that, though he shoots down all of her suggestions. And ultimately, we have this picture of them working more equally. Yeah, I don't know what sorry, I'm distracted by June being suspiciously quiet. Yeah, we just have a picture of them more as equals, and that's kind of nice. It stinks that it is in this moment where they are no longer puppies, where they are no longer sort of on the right side of God. They have been perverted by Satan and the serpents. Anyway, so that's where we end book 11, with them deciding that they will try to make the best of the situation. And it's an interesting moment because, it's an interesting moment for lots of reasons, but one of the reasons it's interesting is because it mirrors that post-fall self-reflection that we get at the beginning of the poem, where we see Satan having a conversation with Beelzebub about what they ought to do. And then within Pandemonium, we hear four different presentations on what ought to be done next. They aren't the same plans, so we don't get the same set of plans presented to us, like an earthly version of those plans that we got in Pandemonium. But it is interesting to see another parallel. Okay. Preambling has been more like rambling, sorry. Why don't we just pick up at the beginning of book 11? I'll read the argument first, like always, and then not as long of a segment today. We'll go through line 292. Only 5 of these left. Then what will I do? Probably make more bread. Okay, book 11, the argument. The Son of God presents to his Father the prayers of our first parents now repenting, and intercedes for them. God accepts them, but declares that they must no longer abide in paradise. Sends Michael with a band of cherubim to dispossess them, but first to reveal to Adam future things. Michael's coming down. Adam shows to Eve certain ominous signs. He discerns Michael's approach, goes out to meet him. The angel denounces their departure. Eve's lamentation. Adam pleads but submits. The angel leads him up to a high hill and sets before him in vision what shall happen till the flood. All right. Line 1. Thus they in lowliest plight repentant stood praying. For from the mercy seat above prevenient grace descending had removed the stony from their hearts and made new flesh regenerate grow instead. That sighs now breathed unutterable, which the spirit of prayer inspired and winged for heaven with speedier flight than loudest oratory. If you're somebody who's like super nerdy about wordplay, that the like sighs now breathed, which the spirit of prayer inspired. Do some etymological digging on inspire. And step back, come to this moment, and appreciate what Milton is doing. So rewarding. That sighs now breathed unutterable, which the spirit of prayer inspired, and winged for heaven with speedier flight than loudest oratory. Yet their port not of mean suitors, nor important less seemed their petition, than when the ancient pair in fables old, less ancient yet than these, Deucalion and chaste Pyrrha, to restore the race of mankind, drowned, before the shrine of Themis stood devout. To heaven their prayers flew up, nor missed the way by envious winds blown vagabond or frustrate. In they passed dimensionless, through heavenly doors, then clad with incense, where the golden altar fumed by their great intercessor, came in sight before the Father's throne. Them the glad Son presenting, thus to intercede began. See, Father, what first fruits on earth are sprung from thy implanted grace in man. These sighs and prayers, which in this golden censer, mixed with incense, I thy priest before thee bring, fruits of more pleasing savor from thy seed, sown with contrition in his heart, than those which his own hand manuring all the trees of paradise could have produced, ere fallen from innocence. Now therefore bend thine ear to supplication. Hear his sighs, though mute. Unskillful with what words to pray, let me interpret for him, me his advocate and propitiation. All his works on me, good or not good, engraft. My merit those shall perfect, and for these my death shall pay. Accept me, and in me from these receive the smell of peace toward mankind. Let him live before thee reconciled, at least his days numbered, though sad, till death his doom, which I to mitigate thus plead, not to reverse. To better life shall yield him, where with me all my redeemed may dwell in joy and bliss, made one with me as I am one with thee. To whom the Father without cloud serene. All thy request for man, accepted Son, obtain. All thy request was my decree. But longer in that paradise to dwell, the law I gave to nature him forbids. Those pure mortal elements that know no gross, no unharmonious mixture foul, eject him tainted now, and purge him off as a distemper, gross to air as gross, and mortal food as may dispose him best for disillusion wrought by sin, that first distempered all things, and of incorrupt corrupted. I at first with two fair gifts created him endowed, with happiness and immortality. That fondly lost, this other served but to eternize woe, till I provided death. So death becomes his final remedy, and after life, tried in sharp tribulation, and refined by faith and faithful works, second life, waked in the renovation of the just, resigns him up with heaven and earth renewed. But let us call to synod all the blessed through heaven's wide bounds. From them I will not hide my judgments, how with mankind I proceed, as how with peccant angels late they saw, and in their state, though firm, stood more confirmed. He ended, and the sun gave signal high. To the bright minister that watched, he blew his trumpet, heard in Oreb since perhaps when God descended, and perhaps once more to sound at general doom. The angelic blast filled all the regions. From their blissful bowers of amaranthine shade, fountain or spring, by the waters of life, where'er they sat in fellowships of joy, the sons of light hasted, resorting to the summons high, and took their seats, till from his throne supreme the Almighty thus pronounced his sovereign will. O sons, like one of us man is become, to know both good and evil, since his taste of that defended fruit. But let him boast his knowledge of good lost, and evil got, happier, had it sufficed him to have known good by itself, and evil not at all. He sorrows now, repents, and prays contrite, my motions in him. Longer than they move, his heart I know, how variable and vain self-left. Lest therefore his now bolder hand reach also of the tree of life, and eat and live forever, dream at least to live forever, to remove him I decree, and send him from the garden forth to till the ground whence he was taken, fitter soil. Michael, this my behest have thou in charge. Take to thee from among the cherubim thy choice of flaming warriors, lest the fiend or in behalf of man or to invade vacant possession some new trouble raise. Haste thee, and from the paradise of God without remorse drive out the sinful pair. From hallowed ground the unholy, and denounce to them and to their progeny from thence perpetual banishment. Yet lest they faint at the sad sentence rigorously urged, for I behold them softened and with tears bewailing their excess, all terror hide. If patiently thy bidding they obey, dismiss them not disconsolate. Reveal to Adam what shall come in future days, as I shall thee enlighten. Intermix my covenant and the woman's seed renewed. So send them forth, though sorrowing, yet in peace. And on the east side of the garden place, where entrance up from Eden easiest climbs, cherubic watch, and of a sword the flame wide waving, all approach far off to fright, and guard thy all passage to the tree of life, lest paradise a receptacle prove to spirits foul, and all my trees their prey, with whose stolen fruit man once more to delude. He ceased, and the archangelic power prepared for swift descent. With him the cohort bright of watchful cherubim. 4 faces each had, like a double Janus, all their shape spangled with eyes more numerous than those of Argus, and more wakeful than to drowse, charmed with Arcadian pipe, the pastoral reed of Hermes, or his opiate rod. Meanwhile, to resalute the world with sacred light, Leucothea waked, and with fresh dews embalmed the earth, when Adam and first matron Eve had ended now their orisons, and found strength added from above, new hope to spring out of despair, joy, but with fear yet linked, which thus to Eve his welcomed words renewed. Eve, easily may faith admit that all the good which we enjoy from heaven descends, but that from us aught should ascend to heaven, so prevalent as to concern the mind of God high blessed, or to incline his will, hard to believe may seem. Yet this will prayer, or one short sigh of human breath, upborne even to the seat of God. For since I sought by prayer the offended deity to appease, kneeled and before him humbled all my heart, methought I saw him placable and mild, bending his ear. Persuasion in me grew that I was heard with favor. Peace returned home to my breast, and to my memory his promise that thy seed shall bruise our foe. Which then not minded in dismay, yet now assures me that the bitterness of death is past, and we shall live. Whence hail to thee, Eve rightly called, mother of mankind, mother of all things living, since by thee man is to live, and all things live for man. To whom thus Eve with sad demeanor meek, ill-worthy I such title should belong to me, transgressor, who for thee ordained a help became thy snare. To me reproach rather belongs, distrust and all dispraise. But infinite in pardon was my judge, that I who first brought death on all am graced the source of life. Next favorable thou, who highly thus to entitle me vouchsafest far other name deserving. But the field to labor calls us now with sweat imposed, though after sleepless night. For see, the morn, all unconcerned with our unrest, begins her rosy progress smiling. Let us forth. I never from thy side henceforth to stray, where'er our day's work lies, though now enjoined laborious, till day droop. While here we dwell, what can be toilsome in these pleasant walks? Here let us live, though in fallen state, content. So spake, so wished, much humbled Eve, but fate subscribed not. Nature first gave signs, impressed on bird, beast, air suddenly eclipsed after short blush of morn. Nigh in her sight, the bird of Jove stooped from his airy tower, 2 birds of gayest plume before him drove. Down from a hill the beast that reigns in woods, first hunter then, pursued a gentle brace, goodliest of all the forest, hart and hind. Direct to the eastern gate was bent their flight. Adam observed, and with his eye the chase pursuing, not unmoved to Eve, thus spake. O Eve, some further change awaits us nigh, which heaven by these mute signs in nature shows forerunners of his purpose, or to warn us haply to secure of our discharge from penalty, because from death released some days. How long and what till then our life, who knows? Or more than this, that we are dust, and thither must return and be no more. Why else this double object in our sight, of flight pursued in the air and o'er the ground, one way the selfsame hour? Why in the east darkness ere day's mid-course, and morning light more orient in yon western cloud that draws o'er the blue firmament a radiant white, and slow descends, with something heavenly fraught? He erred not, for by this the heavenly bands down from a sky of jasper lighted now in paradise, and on a hill made alt, a glorious apparition, had not doubt and carnal fear that day dimmed Adam's eye. That not more glorious when the angels met Jacob in Mahanaim. I do not know. Where he saw the field pavilioned with his guardians bright. Nor that which one on the flaming mount appeared in Dothan, covered with a camp of fire against the Syrian king, who to surprise one man, assassin-like, had levied war unproclaimed. The princely hierarch, in their bright stand, there left his powers to seize possession of the garden. He alone to find where Adam sheltered took his way, not unperceived of Adam, who to Eve, while the great visitant approached, thus spake. Eve, now expect great tidings, which perhaps of us will soon determine or impose new laws to be observed. For I descry from yonder blazing cloud that veils the hill one of the heavenly host, and by his gate none of the meanest, some great potentate, or of the thrones above. Such majesty invests him coming. Yet not terrible that I should fear, more sociably mild as Raphael, that I should much confide, but solemn and sublime, whom not to offend, with reverence I must meet, and thou retire. He ended, and the archangel soon drew nigh, not in his shape celestial, but as a man clad to meet man. Over his lucid arms a military vest of purple flowed, livelier than Meliboan, or the grain of Sarah, worn by kings and heroes old in time of truce. Iris had dipped the woof. His starry helm unbuckled, showed him prime and manhood where youth ended. By his side, as in a glistering zodiac, hung the sword, Satan's dire dread, and in his hand the spear, Adam bowed low. He kingly from his state inclined not, but his coming thus declared. Adam, heaven's high behest no preface needs. Sufficient that thy prayers are heard, and death, then due by sentence when thou didst transgress, defeated of his seizure many days, given thee of grace, whereon thou mayest repent, and one bad act with many deeds well done mayest cover. Well may then the Lord, appeased, redeem thee quite from death's rapacious claim. But longer in this paradise to dwell permits not. To remove thee I am come, and send thee from the garden forth to till the ground whence thou wast taken, fitter soil. He added not, for Adam at the news, heart struck with chilling gripe of sorrow, stood, that all his senses bound. Eve, who unseen, yet all had heard, with audible lament, discovered soon the place of her retire. O unexpected stroke, worse than of death! Must I leave thee, paradise? Thus leave thee, native soil, these happy walks and shades, fit haunt to gods? Where I had hoped to spend quiet, though sad, the respite of that day that must be mortal to us both. O flowers that never will in other climate grow, my early visitation, and my last at even, which I bred up with tender hand from the first opening bud, and gave ye names, who now shall rear ye to the sun, or rank your tribes, and water from the ambrosial fount. Thee, lastly, nuptial bower, by me adorned, with what to sight or smell was sweet. From thee how shall I part, and whither wander down into a lower world, to this obscure and wild? How shall we breathe in other air less pure, accustomed to mortal fruits? Whom thus the angel interrupted mild. Lament not, Eve, but patiently resign what justly thou hast lost, nor set thy heart thus overfond on that which is not thine. Thy going is not lonely. With thee goes thy husband, him to follow thou art bound. Where he abides, think there thy native soil. All right, tomorrow we'll hear from Adam.